Season 13 is frequently regarded to be the pinnacle of Doctor Who, the jewel of the crown that is the Philip Hinchcliffe era of the show. However, at the middle of this season is the Android Invasion, which was the lowest ranked story of this season in the recent DWM poll. It is often considered to be uninteresting, unambitious, and generally unworthy of viewers' time. In the story, the Doctor and Sarah Jane arrive on what appears to be Earth and investigate an idyllic village controlled by white-suited figures and populated by robotic people, with calendars stuck on the same date. This village is revealed to be on an alien planet as it was created by the Krulls as part of their plan to attack the real Earth. Working for the Krulls is the astronaut Crayford, who was presumed to have died in space. The villagers turn out to be androids built by the Krulls, just as later in the story Sarah Jane is captured and replaced by an android. Yet the Doctor is able to quickly identify that she is a duplicate by her uncharacteristic fondness for ginger beer. Escaping aboard the Krull ship, the Doctor and the real Sarah Jane return to Earth and deactivate the androids, stopping the Krulls from releasing a deadly virus. Of course, by presenting it this way, I've ignored all the going back and forth between locations, which comes from the many times the Doctor and Sarah Jane are captured. The over-reliance on this trope is a common criticism of the story, as it is seen as narrative padding, making it just a worse version of the stories around it. However, upon closer examination, it's clear that this is a masterpiece. The writer was clearly well-versed in John Baudrillard's philosophical treatise, Simulacra and Simulation, which posits that human experience is only a simulation of reality. As the story uses John Baudrillard's theory of simulacra to emphasise the unreality of the setting. This theory includes 4 stages. Layer 1 is the faithful image, a basic reflection of reality. In this instance, it's represented by classic horror literature, an example being Jack Finney's novel, The Body Snatchers, which is grounded in Cold War anxieties. While the second layer here is film adaptations of horror literature, which are often in a Gothic style. Because they're a distortion of the original, using the same content of the story, but adapting the style for a visual medium. An example of this is the 1956 adaptation of The Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which leans more into paranoia using a noir style. Layer 3 is Doctor Who stories made when Philip Hinchcliffe was the producer, as they present themselves as original stories, yet they copy ideas associated with the previous layer, just as third order signs claim to be faithful copies. This is because this era of the show draws heavily on horror elements, frequently being inspired by Hammer horror films. This can be seen with Terror of the Zygons having a concept very reminiscent of The Invasion of the Body Snatchers, as it also features people being replaced by alien duplicates. So in this case, the 4th layer is the Android Invasion. This is a pure simulation, with no longer any reference to the first layer. It only serves to reflect other representations, being a deliberate imitation of other Hinchcliffe-era stories. It draws from many ideas from past episodes, and follows a narrative similar to that of Terror of the Zygons. To communicate that it is a simulation of previous stories, the Android Invasion makes many specific references to the show's past, such as starting the story with the Doctor and Sarah Jane arriving in a quarry. Setting stories in quarries is a well-known trope of the series. It is the most effective way to realise alien landscapes, so to set many of the early scenes in a quarry, it communicates that the story will be drawing on previous ideas. This is reinforced by the inclusion of the robots dressed in white, as the guns embedded in their hands hark back to the Autons. Using ideas from significantly earlier in the show's run, it draws attention to the fact that they are reused elements, preparing the audience to notice reused elements from more contemporary stories. Another Season 7 story is referenced when the Doctor investigates the space security station, as he enters the Brigadier's office to find a man wearing an eye patch. Just as in Inferno, the Doctor expects to find the Brigadier, but encounters the eye patch wearing brigade leader. The story uses this previous scene where a character discovers a lesser copy to see the idea that the setting of the story is a lesser copy of what the characters believe it to be. The motif of false copies of the Brigadier is carried over into the last part, as at the real Space Defence Station, Colonel Faraday is in charge instead of the Brigadier. Faraday's lower rank is used to identify him as being a lesser version, while Unit's presence is used to remind viewers of previous stories. Yet the omission of the Brigadier removes the central part of those previous stories to create a sense of a hollow copy, which is an idea that comes up frequently in the works of Baudrillard. Overall, Unit have a diminished role in this story compared to their previous appearances. Their inclusion becomes a callback to previous Unit-centric stories, yet without the integration into the narrative, making this appearance seem empty. This idea is foreshadowed with the first scene of the story, as a zombie-like Unit corporal mindlessly stumbles to his doom, showing that Unit in this story is lifeless, and his death represents the unsatisfying end to this era of the show, with this being the last appearances of Harry and Benton. After the Doctor finds Crayford in the Space Security Centre, he is captured by the robots and brought to a prison cell. As this is around 24 minutes into the episode, viewers are already primed to expect a cliffhanger. So when Sarah Jane immediately finds the cell and starts to unbolt the door, the tension dissipates, leading to the actual cliffhanger, which is one of the Krulls just peering through a hole in the wall. This lacks any dramatic urgency. The story takes this regular feature of the format and makes it underwhelming, merely a reference to the idea of a cliffhanger. This exemplifies how the story itself chooses to take the format of a Doctor Who story, but removes the interesting qualities. Later in the story, the Doctor and Sarah Jane are captured on board the Krull spaceship, and Crayford uses this opportunity to explain their plan. This emulates the common trope of villains monologuing their evil schemes to the Doctor, though this instance is much more blatant than previous times, while also being delivered by the lesser of the story's villains. This has been done to create the experience of encountering a lesser copy, which is anchored by the scene also being the moment our protagonists realise they're on a lesser copy of Earth. The date on all the pages of the calendar is Friday the 6th of July. This is interesting, as this date did not fall on a Friday in 1975. Instead, the closest time it fell on such a date was in 1973. The choice of a historical date continues the idea that this world is tied to the past. The repeating days of the calendar are also a visual reminder of the theme of repetition which permeates through the android invasion. This repetition the story is built on is used to reflect Sarah Jane's experience in the town, as at the start she claims that she has been there before. She specifically uses the phrase "on a story" to indicate that it was part of her journalistic work. However, it could also serve as a reference to the android invasion's metatextual nature, as the word story could also refer to previous episodes of the series, showing that Sarah Jane also feels as though she has experienced this before in a previous Doctor Who story. Another way the story gets viewers to question the reality of the characters' surroundings is through subverting the expected quality of production elements. One example of this is the cumbersome nature of the masks of the Kralls. This is used as an exaggeration of the unbelievability of previous monster costumes that also used rubber masks. This is also used throughout the story with doorways which clearly show flat backdrops. By representing the village as being two-dimensional, it highlights its artifice. Just as during the sequence where the rocket leaves the Krall planet, there is obvious blue screen and noticeable stock footage. By focusing on the unreality at the moment they leave the artificial setting, it creates a more clear contrast between that world and the real Earth. While getting the viewers to question the believability of the elements that comprise the story, it draws them to also notice the constructed nature of the rest of this era. This sense of continuous question is used to reflect the feelings of the Doctor and Sarah Jane as they wonder if the village is really what it seems. The general decline of the narrative as it progresses is used to evoke the sense that the world is becoming more evidently unreal, as there is a shift from the intrigue of the start to the narrative circles of the middle to the end's focus on the Krall's not entirely sensible plan. The viewer's disbelief of the narrative is used to allow them to empathise with the Doctor and Sarah Jane as they also stop believing the reality of the village. The story that the android invasion repeats the most ideas from is the first story of this season, Terror of the Zygons. One reused idea is enemies that disguise their appearance. While in the original story this is a natural ability of the titular foes, in the latter story the robots are assembled specifically to function that way. The dichotomy between the organic and the mechanical processes used in the two stories is utilised to present this story as an artificial replication of Terror of the Zygons. The village setting from Terror of the Zygons is also echoed in Devonshire, however the village in the android invasion is shown to be empty to represent the hollow nature of the story. Both stories also set a lot of action in a pub, but these pubs both had ways for the villains to spy on the Doctor. In the original story, the Zygons used the head of a deer to hide a camera, while only 3 stories later the Kralls surveilled the Doctor through a dartboard in Devonshire's pub. The eye of the deer becomes abstracted into the simple circular shape of the dartboard, continuing the theme of decay and imitation. The Kralls themselves are an emulation of the Zygons. Both have a rubbery appearance, both are initially glimpsed through close-up shots of their hands, and even the lead Krall's name, Zygons, is meant to sound like Zygon. By replicating ideas from a story that aired so recently, it ensures that it will be fresh in the viewer's mind, allowing them to easily draw the parallels between the story and previous ones, and therefore creating the feeling of a facsimile. In Baudrillard's theory, hyperreality is when the distinction between reality and simulation has collapsed, and where simulation does not represent reality, but replaces it. Just as the android invasion uses many elements from Terror of the Zygons, yet only the android invasion is available to watch on iPlayer, effectively replacing the original story. The writer uses this to show that the world of the story is a simulacra. A symptom of hyperreality is the difficulty maintaining a sense of self. As Baudrillard once said, "I am the simulacrum of myself," when referring to the idea that when in a hyperreal society, individuals no longer experience themselves as a coherent subject, but as a copy. Guy Crayford is used to convey a sense of hyperreality, as he believes himself to be a copy constructed from his original self's remains. To further explore the idea of him being a copy, Milton Johns was cast, as this is the second character he's played after playing Bennick in The Enemy of the World. It uses extra diegetic viewer recognition to reinforce the illusion of his duplication, strengthening the idea of Crayford's compromised sense of identity, which presents the setting of the android invasion as hyperreal. In Part 4, the Doctor gets Crayford to remove his eye patch. In this outstanding moment it is revealed that his eye was not lost during the crashing of the ship, and that the Kralls have lied about him being rebuilt. The eye patch covering one eye symbolises that he is partially blind to the plans of the Kralls, as he did not know that they planned to wipe out humanity. By having the loss of the eye patch linked with the realisation of his true self, acts as a sign representing the lie told by the Kralls, which is used to literally blind him from reality. After Crayford realises that he is not a copy, he sets in motion the chain of events that leads to the death of Stigron, who was responsible for maintaining the artificial world. Showing the regaining of one's identity can bring about the return to reality from hyperreality. In Baudrillard's 1983 work, Fatal Strategies, hyperreality marks the death of the subject and the supremacy of objects, where agency shifts to autonomous systems of signs and simulations. In this instance, the Doctor and Sarah Jane are the subjects of the narrative, so the death of the subject is shown through the robot's attempt to kill them when they are in the village. The androids function as simulacral objects, mimicking human form while erasing authentic subjectivity. The village is run by these robots, representing the power of objects. This is done to further develop the idea that the village is in a state of hyperreality. Baudrillard claims that to navigate hyperreality, one must go over to the side of the object, just as the Doctor pretends to be his android duplicate when sneaking into the complex at the end of the story. This interaction leads the Doctor to say,
"Nobody knows who's who around here."
It's another genius example of the blurring between the original and the copy. The ambiguity of who not only refers to the confusion of identities within the narrative, but also acts as a metatextual reference to the Doctor Who itself. This draws attention to the constructed nature of the story and the series as a whole. By invoking the concept of hyperreality, the writer is showing that the android invasion's reused mediocre elements were deliberately included to draw focus to the story's own hyperreal nature, shaping the experience of watching it to mirror the experience of the characters navigating this unreal world. This 1975 story is ahead of its time with its references to Baudrillardian theory that allow it to demonstrate a mastery of metatextual storytelling. While Season 13 has many highly regarded stories, no others have been able to build on ideas that have come before with such literary skill. So leave a comment to let me know your thoughts about the story, or if you just want to complain about the weather.